Hey, Future Lawyer. Welcome to the LSAT Simplified podcast presented by Hey Future Lawyer, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. If you want to check out our free LSAT course, go to heyfuturelawyer.com to sign up for a free account today. Hey, everyone. Welcome. This is Madeline Jessen, who, if you are a longtime listener, you will remember. And I actually did throw one of our questions towards the end of a podcast episode like a week or two ago, so people would have seen that. Real quick, other announcements. Last week, I uploaded the Harvard admin episode, but we had to take that down due to work stuff with her. We had talked about her employment at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and there was stuff that was not permitted to be talked about. She got an email, which presumably was not directed at us, but also, we don't want to get her fired from her U.S. Attorney's Office job. So Madeline is another LSAT professional. I guess real quick, what's the 30-second or like 1 minute bio of who you are and what your deal is?
Ooh, okay. So my name is Madeline. I tutored the LSAT. I took the LSAT in 2020 and I've been tutoring part-time, I would say heavy part-time, for the past several years. I live in Kentucky and I have two small children, so I've been pretty occupied with them for the past several years, but I am starting law school this fall.
Yeah, and Madeline got into all sorts of really impressive law schools. She won't say it because she's humble, but like you should listen to her. She actually knows what she's talking about on unlike Reddit or other sources of information. So with that, we have a few topics for today. The first of which is that we are recording this on Tuesday, April 22nd, and I expect that I'll get this up today. In fact, I should, because otherwise this segment will be pretty worthless. But the first thing is, like, should you take June? Because today is the June registration deadline. LSAC does not mess around with their deadline. So if you don't register, you are not taking it. And further, they're pretty strict about refunds. So if you register, you are either taking it or you are out your money. You could always unregister and just not take it. But I guess, yeah. So with that, what is your advice, Madeline? If someone comes to you and says, hey, Madeline, I'm thinking about taking June, what do you think I should do?
It really depends, I would say, on where they are with their studying and more importantly, their practice tests. So I'll always ask, like, where are you practice testing? And right away, if someone's like, oh, I haven't taken a practice test yet, no, June. June is not the test, I would say. It's really important that you do a sufficient number of practice tests to really understand exactly where you're scoring. And my own personal rule of thumb, there's definitely some variation here, but I would say for the most part, if you're more than like 5 points out from your goal score, like the range you want to score, it's not probable that you're going to get there by June. It's possible, it can happen, but it's just probably not likely. Again, also depending on where you're trying to score. It's obviously easier to improve 5 points if you're trying to go from 150 to 155 than from 165 to 170. That latter jump is going to be more of a grind than the former. And when it comes to, because I think many people who are taking the June exam are doing so to apply next cycle, right? To apply in the fall. And if you're sort of on the fence as to whether you're going to be ready for June or not, in terms of still applying on time, or early, I should say, in the next cycle, you're not disadvantaged by taking August because the applications haven't even opened yet, or most of them haven't even opened yet, or none of them have opened, I think, that early in August. So if it doesn't make a difference in terms of your timeline with applying, might as well give yourself the extra 2 months, really, which is a long time in LSAT study world. You can do a lot with that time. So I always say, if you're too far out from your target, or if you're just feeling really kind of anxious about how your practice tests have been, if they've been kind of inconsistent, and you just don't feel super optimistic that you're going to hit your goal by June, that's going to put so much pressure on you to like make that happen in June, which just can often be counterproductive. Versus taking August, you can allow yourself that time to really solidify your practice test, solidify your scoring, and go into that exam just feeling way more confident about where you are, which will make it, I think, more likely you'll actually perform to that high standard that you've set.
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of who should take it. I totally agree that if someone's more than 5 points out, the likelihood of making that improvement is low. But I always caveat it with my follow-up question is, okay, do you like your PT scores? And then if they say no, then my second question is like, well, how much do you value $238? Because you can always pay for the option to take it and then decide at a later date, as in the day before the test, if you're going to take it. This obviously depends on if you actually, like, if $238 is make or break for you in terms of like making rent and you are a poor person, I would not do that because that's unfortunate. And realistically, like Madeline says, if you're more than 5 points out, the odds of improving are pretty low. That being said, with where we're at in the cycle, all we have left before applications open is June and August. And there is value in getting it done earlier. One of our favorite LSAT goofballs that we both are familiar with is already telling people how applying in October or how taking October isn't late, which is so frustrating to me because I'm like, why are you planning on October? Like, start studying, plan for as soon as you're ready. And if you need to take October, like, it is what it is. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of people planning on October, they're doing that so they can start studying later, which is that's a whole separate point. He makes me angry. But anyway, because I'm just like, are you? It's like, is your market just like stupid people that are procrastinating? Like, is that who you want studying? Like, I don't know. It's probably why he thinks studying for the LSAT takes 8 months. It's because he markets towards dummies. But that's a separate point. The I guess main point is, yeah, I think that taking June is generally not wise unless you like your PT scores. But with the caveat of like, if you are 5 to 6 points out or 7 points out, there is some value in trying to get it done. Further, I have
Yeah.
a lot of people that took April, and LSAC seems to be swinging back towards dysfunction with their testing. Have you heard reports from that as well with your kiddos?
No, I haven't really from April.
Oh, interesting. So maybe I just got a bad sample, but a lot of the folks I had said that April was a bit of a disaster. They had,
Mm,
for those of you wondering, this is not unique to either in person or online. Both can have issues. The issues I heard were largely remote, where the proctors are apparently they don't have enough of them, is what I'm hearing. So they will like go AWOL and not respond to you for like 10 minutes during your break because now they have a break between the second and third section.
mhm.
So during that, one person said they came back and there was just like radio silence for like 30 minutes before they could restart their test. But in a weird way, that person said, well, now I feel more comfortable for June because like although it does like it wasn't a fun day, like I know what it is, and it's just another LSAT. Because while we tell people this all the time that the official LSAT is just another like practice test, I find people sometimes don't quite believe it, and sometimes seeing it and being like, oh, this really is just the same stuff I've been doing is.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Like, do you think there's any value in taking June?
Yeah, well, I think it depends a lot on sort of the personality, I guess, of the test taker, because I think for some people, especially who are kind of like on that cusp of like they could do something solid in June, potentially. Obviously, if you're like way far out, it's
Mhm.
not worth it. But kind of like, ooh, like I maybe could put up a decent score in June. For certain people, I think it is a big relief to just take it. And even if it's not their ultimate goal, if they're pretty close to it, like maybe their goal is like a 168 and they score like a 165 or a 166, right? That's still a pretty solid score relative to your goal to like have under your belt. And in then going for a retake in August, I think it can help just take off a lot of that pressure to be like,
Right.
okay, I just have to do a few more points higher. I've continued to study. Like, worst case, I have like a score that's pretty close to what I want. I mean, it can make a big difference, obviously, but it just that I think mentally can, for certain people, be really helpful, along with what you said of the experience of having taken the exam and being, familiar with it. I think there's some people who in in that situation might be like, like, okay, that's good enough. I don't want to do it anymore, and kind of just write themselves out where then they could,
Right.
potentially. So I think it depends, I think, on one's personality or like kind of their motivation or whatnot. I think I know for me personally, I had the luxury of not being on any sort of timeline of like an application cycle because I took my LSAT just kind of indefinitely before when I was planning to apply. And so I know for me, I was like, I'm not going to take it until I'm like beyond where I want to be. Because for me, I'm like, if I don't have to do it by a certain time, I don't want to spend the 200. Back then it was only $200, only $200 instead of 238. But I agree. I think if that amount of money is worth it to have to like take it and then take it again, it can, I think, be helpful from just sort of spreading the eggs around multiple baskets, so to speak, and not putting all that pressure on that later exam.
Yeah. Well, and that's my real, not to go back to me, with my, I wouldn't say obsession, but my distaste towards people like advocating October at this point is that like it really comes back to that point you said about putting your eggs all in one basket, where like technically I think applying with an October LSAT is somewhat okay and the
Hmm.
offers don't get terrible from what I see. However, when you plan on October as your first take, you make everything right on that, or else your application
Yeah.
you get sidelined because the next test is November, and you don't get your score back until after Thanksgiving break. I do see a tangible difference between people applying before that. I mean, it's a rough guideline, of course, and obviously, if you're like way overqualified, it's fine. But typically, people waiting to take the November LSAT are not way overqualified. Um, and anyways, people will plan on October, and then it has to all go perfect, or else their whole life plan just falls apart. And that's why I think it's such a so like if you are listening, I would plan on taking the LSAT in August. Maybe you get there, maybe you don't. But and this is assuming you haven't studied that much yet. If you have studied and you like where you're at, I probably would take June. But otherwise, I would really aim for August because just because September does work doesn't mean you should aim for it. Aim for as soon as
Yeah.
possible, and then if necessary, push yourself back because yeah, it's a weird fascination we get because Madeline and I we talk to a lot of LSAT preppers, and I am always fascinated by how many people I talk to this time of year, and they'll tell me they're like registered for October or November. I'm like, why did you make that decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you decide when someone should register for the LSAT? Like, what's your thought process when talking through it with them? And this is
Well,
broader than the June, like further out, I guess.
yeah, you mean just sort of like generally speaking, when
Yeah,
someone's like, "Hey, when should I take it?" Well, I think for me, especially like if I'm maybe just met someone or just sort of am familiar with kind of where they're at, I think, based off where someone's starting in terms of like their diagnostic and sort of me understanding their kind of personality and their commitment to the LSAT, I think it's fairly easy to gauge how long it should take them to adequately prepare for it. For example, if someone is really focused, is really committed, and they're starting in like a decent, with I don't like saying it like decent diagnostic, but a little bit about like a higher diagnostic, let's say.
sure, yeah,
Then a consistent 3 to 5 months should do it. And I find that that's so long, assuming necessary assumption that they are committed and study consistently. And of course, depending on what their goal is, right? Versus someone who maybe has a little bit further to go, they can still do it. It just is probably going to take more time, which isn't a bad thing so long as, we're just preparing for it. So I tend to kind of estimate it based off that. And someone will often say like, okay, I'm thinking about taking like this exam. Often when people meet with me for the first time, they have an idea of when they were thinking about taking it. And I'll just sort of give that feedback if I think that's appropriate, if that's an appropriate goal or not, or if it's a completely delusional goal or a necessary goal. If they're planning to take it super far out, I'm like, you can probably take it sooner. I had someone I met with starting like in December last year, and she was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna." And she had taken the exam before. She's like, "I'm aiming to retake it in June." I'm like, "You can do it in April, if not sooner."
right,
And she did end up taking it in April, and she's, she probably could have even taken it in February, but she ended up taking April, and obviously we don't know the score yet, but she seemed, I mean, I was confident about where she was at going into it, and she was too. So,
yeah.
um, yeah. But also for anyone listening, in terms of really the value of applying early, just for what it's worth, with my own application cycle, I applied in September, and I actually feel pretty confident that I would say for at least like
Oh,
half
you
of
for
the
sure have been
schools.
rejected by a couple of the schools.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, 100%. Like, or at least I would say at least like I would say there's probably four schools that come to mind that if I had applied, let's say like after October, or even after September, I would have either been rejected or like the performative wait list. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
it's like we're just like it's like basically a rejection. So it's funny because sometimes there's often a lot of pushback I see in terms of like you don't have to apply early, you can still apply, blah blah blah. I'm like you can, but if
Well,
you
yeah.
should do what would optimize your chances for success. And people are like, oh, like how are you able to like get into this school or this school? I'm like, because I applied like the first day it opened and
Yeah.
I snatched up a spot. like,
And I'm
um,
pretty cynical about where that comes from. Like I'd say weird kind of pushback. But I think
mhm,
it is because, and this is why I think we get along, is because we just, I'd say, give the best advice, which is not always in our interest in a weird way. Because, like, for example, told someone to take April,
mhm.
she was open to studying until September. And this is a kid who has, like, the parent credit card. They're paying for as much LSAT prep. I could probably be charging her 5 times what I'm charging her, and she'd probably still pay it without really caring. Like, it is what it is. but she's like scoring where she wants to be. So it's like take the test, and if you score highly, you're done, and like enjoy your summer. But
Yeah, you don't need to drag it out. Yeah.
and I was like, in all likelihood, you're probably gonna take it again. But it's like take a shot. But I think a lot of it, especially the applying later, it comes from like there really is a lot of, and this is less so for us. People do LSAT year round. Like while it's somewhat cyclical, the admissions editing is super cyclical, where like it dies between like January to like probably even like June-ish. And so those people really have to push that applying late doesn't hurt. And yeah, I guess some cycles is not as bad, but I see an issue. And then further, like there is the incentive of the law schools. Their applicate like their ranking goes up, whether or not people get rejected or get accepted. Like you all need to understand that their incentives are to get you to apply no matter how good of an applicant you are. So when they tell you they're super holistic, I mean, for one, they're not, but when they tell you that, it's because they want you to apply no matter how bad your personal statement is, or no matter how bad your LSAT is. They just want to get you and then throw you right in the trash a lot of the time. I mean, they might like you, and they're not necessarily bad people, but the amount of people that I'd say take the admissions officers at their word, it just blows my mind. It's like they say stuff that's just like verifiably false, and people will. The one that gets me is the we don't negotiate. I was like, well, everything's negotiation. You can just say you're not coming. Just be like, okay, I'm not coming, unless you change my scholarship. And suddenly their tune might change, and it might not. Like they might, be telling the truth. Like they're not going to give you more. But yeah, the whole we don't negotiate is literally a negotiation tactic. I don't understand. People understand. So, anyways, it's a lot of chatting, but I'd say overall we've come to a pretty simple answer. If you like your scores, you should probably take. If you don't, you probably shouldn't. But get on the horse. Like just because you're not taking it doesn't mean like, oh, now you have. Like I was talking to one girl on Instagram, and she told me she's like, oh, if I take June, I'm going to study 4 hours a day because I'm out of school. But if I take August, I'm going to study 1 to 2, which I recommend 1 to 2 hours a day. But it's like, why are you changing your study habits based on when you're taking the test? Like do something. I just thought it was so odd, but I guess people think that way about the LSAT because not like we're a little too in the LSAT weeds to really have perspective, but it's just like to me, it's like so obviously stupid to approach the LSAT that way. But there's just no understanding. Cool. I guess any closing thoughts, or is that basically all you have to say about when to take?
I feel like I've said everything that came to mind. It's just I feel like this is an interesting example because I feel like there's always sort of this conversation because there's 8 tests a year, so I feel like I'm always floating this like should I take it now or should I wait? But it's kind of interesting for the summer exams for June and August because obviously the application is like materially sooner, right? Versus like if someone's like like October versus November to apply for the next year, I'm like this is not really an issue. And it's interesting to me too that they do. I'm curious the thought process that goes into when they space out the exams. Yeah, because I feel like rather than doing September, October, or August, September, October, November, I feel like it should be May. Yeah, they should do like April, May, June, July. I think that should be like the streak that they do. Because to me, the September, October, November. It just seems like this is why there's this late mad dash every fall, right?
There's no reason they should have a February test or an April test. Just like the April test is like the worst LSAT. Like, why are you possibly taking? There's realistically not that many people that are already studying for next. Like, there are people. I think a lot of them are kind of the holdovers that tried to go last year, realize it's going to take longer, and now they're going to be early for next cycle.
Yeah,
it's actually not about like those people. I think they're often like super mature because like they just realized like they recognize the situation for what it was. They're like, I started late. It is what it is. I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. I'm just going to readjust and reapply. There are some people that like stick their head in the sand and they're like, I'm still going to apply this year. But a lot of them also return via and then some of them don't. Some of them do squeak into crappy schools paying a substantial amount, which is unfortunate because it's like then it's really bad for them. But that's a separate issue. But, yeah, it is weird how they do it. I'm not sure because I'm sure you remember back. I mean, not even that long ago. I think in like 2022 or 2021, they were offering it like 10 to 11 times a year. So I remember a December test and a July test, but those have since. Actually, let's see if I can find this.
But I feel like I recall it still being 8 times, but it was just different months. Because the year I took the exam, or we took the exam, there was no September test. Because I remember having to decide between August and October, and I ended up taking August.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is weird. So our year, because for those of you listening, Madeline and I both took the LSAT in 2020, which was really during COVID. I think we were both COVID studiers. But so there was August and then October, November, January, February, April. So there are only 6 in that window. That was weird. And I think part of that is because they really had to adjust with the transition to COVID. And then, oh, I guess it was, maybe I'm having like, oh no, they had 9. Oh no, no, they did just have 8 in 2021. Weird. Maybe I'm having like deja vu. I could have sworn there was like 10 or 11 one year, but
But I swear the months were slightly different, and then for the past like now 3 years, they've been the same.
yeah, well, it's been pretty consistent. But like you said, not the most logical. Because I would think if I were scheduling it, I would probably say, I mean, yeah, I'd go like big in the summer, like May, June, July, August, September, and then like maybe you do one every other month after that. Like then maybe you do
Yeah.
November and then January, just like give the options. But
I always get people asking me because I mean, obviously, you and I know when the exams are, like it's
yeah,
automatically, but I think a lot of people don't. And I often get asked, like, oh, where people say, like, oh, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna take the July test. I'm like, there is no July test. And I kind of, there's so many more months of the year than not. Obviously, they have an exam, so it's kind of fair to assume that they would have one.
sure.
But I'm always like, there's no July. Like, that's so inconvenient. I'm like, I know. I feel like there should be July and just get rid of like November or something.
Yeah, and it is weird because LSAC, it's like an odd, I'd say, spectrum between some days. It seems like there's like one guy like running the scenes. He's just like frazzled and trying to hold everything together, doing like the job of like 100 different people. Other days, it seems like they're super analytical. They have about 1,000 employees, which is always mind blowing to me when I hear that.
Yeah.
Because, anyways, so some of them I'm sure do very good work, but so I know there's like decisions going into when they have these. Like this is not an arbitrary decision, but it seems arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like for us looking at it as like LSAT advisors, it's like these are not. I mean, I guess some of them are good, and unfortunately, a lot of them feed into the applying late. The fact that they have September
Yeah.
or
I
November really feeds
yeah,
the applying late because so many people. I mean, I
I
know you
think so.
you see it too, where I have a lot of people that take October and November, and they're trying to apply that. I mean, I have people taking January trying to apply that cycle, which like I will always tell them not to, but I'm also
I
not
feel
going
like
to.
that's probably one of the biggest battles that I fight or you fight too in terms of
Yeah,
like people who are taking it in November that it's like really it's time for next cycle, and having that conversation
yeah.
and there's often resistance there.
Yeah, well, then what doesn't help is all the people saying like, "Hey, like it's totally fine." Ben and Madeline are haters. They're jerks. They're such meanies. Come over
I
here.
don't like where it's like, oh, like it's discouraging. Like it's discouraging for, it's not discouraging. I feel like
Yeah,
I feel like it's encouraging to say like you can have what you want. You can achieve what you want if you're just a little bit flexible with giving
yeah.
yourself more time.
Well, this is a big difference between like kind, not nice. Like I'd say like we are, and I mean you're actually nicer than I am as well. But like telling people what they want to hear is not genuinely what's good for them. Sometimes to say like, hey, that's a terrible plan. You shouldn't do that. It doesn't sound good, and honestly, it turns a lot of people off. Like when someone DMs me and then I respond that, typically they're not going to turn into a client. But also
Mhm.
like, sometimes they need to hear that's like this plan is terrible. And like I mean, I've been called discouraging. I've been called toxic. I've been called a lot of things on the interwebs over the past couple of years. And almost universally, it's like pretty, I'd say, unjustified. Like there's been a couple ones where it's like, okay, I could have phrased that better. Usually not though. Usually it's like you guys are babies and you need to grow up because like me saying that it's not a great idea or like if you can't study for an hour a day, you're gonna fail in law school. Like that's true. If you can't study an hour a day for the LSAT, what in the world makes you think law school is gonna go any better where you have to study like 40 hours a week? Like what are you talking about? Like
Mhm.
anyways, it's frustrating because I feel like we're constantly fighting the bad messaging, and because the bad messaging is like what people want to hear, people like lean into it, and it gets similar play as what ours gets. And in the like, I'd say battleground of ideas, it doesn't do as well, but not everyone can adequately assess what's a good idea versus what's a bad idea. So speaking of that, this is a good transition to I have our 7 tips to raise my LSAT score today with raise
Oh.
capitalized, LSAT capitalized, and today capitalized. Score was not capitalized, nor was your, which is odd because I think they should be capitalized. We're staying consistent here, but
If
cool.
it's a title, right? We have
Yeah.
to, what's the rule? You capitalize everything except for prepositions unless the preposition is 5 letters or something. It's like
Oh,
the
you
grammar
know that one
rule.
question? Yeah. And if the first and last have to be capitalized. No, I know the LSAT question you're talking about with that. For those who
Okay. No, I was thinking just like in terms of the grammar rule that I learned in
oh,
school.
is
But
that
also,
the actual
yeah,
rule?
yeah, like I think like if prepositions you don't capitalize unless it's a 5 letter or more, like
Oh, I
preposition, like
see.
through or
I
although or
I
something.
recently did a must be true question on this
No,
where
but I know which one you're
yeah,
talking about as well, where it's like the old books or something in terms
it's
of like
actually
big
really
revision.
I thought it was a really easy question. I mean, the further I get, and Madeline probably agrees with this, like the must be true questions. It's just like, did you understand what they said? If so, the right answer is obviously right, and the wrong ones are obviously
Like
wrong.
if I'm thinking of the right question, I feel like the right answer is literally just like restating like the second sentence or something in that one. Where
Yeah.
it's
And
like
then the
something
wrong one's
about like
called
yeah.
switch thing. So, anyways, it's I mean, I would share it, but then it gets kind of exposed who it is because they threw their person in it. And I don't want to like make fun of someone publicly with their name attached to it. I'm all about making fun of all the bad LSAT prep or bad. And for what it's worth, I'd say we can maybe do a scoreboard on this because this person has 7 tips, and I would say we can go into like actual useful, maybe bad, and then like I guess like mulligans because there's some filler tips. I think she was just. I mean, maybe she chat GPT. Honestly, I think ChatGPT would have done a better job, but let's see what they got. So tip 1, slow down. And she writes a little blurb for each. So she says, while you want to answer, all caps, every question, it's okay if you don't read every question. Many people will get more questions correct overall if they focus on accuracy as opposed to rushing to read all the questions. So, and also she has 2 spaces between sentences, which is kind of amusing because that's like a relic of old people. Like my mom always told me to do that, but that is from typewriter days. And we are in the modern age where we only need 1 space between sentences. But yeah, initial thoughts, slow down. You don't have to read every question, but you do want to answer them. What's your thought on that?
Wait, okay. When you just said slow down, I was like, yes. And then when you read
Yeah.
the descriptor, I was like, no.
Well,
um,
I think she's actually trying to get to the right point, but she's not
the
communicating it.
way it's saying, because to
Yeah.
me it sounds like you should. I don't know if I'm just misunderstanding it. I might be that like I'm hearing the blurb as saying like you should skim parts
Right.
to get to all the questions. Is that right? Or am I
I
just
think what she's
misinterpreting
saying
that?
is that you want to put a like just to be charitable to her. I think she's saying you want to put an answer in, like fill in a bubble, but maybe
Uh,
like 20 through 25, which I think we would agree with. But she's also
yeah.
says the word read. I would say it's okay if you don't attempt or if you don't get to every question. And so I typically say it like you should answer.
Yeah.
If you don't like solve as many as you can and then fill in the rest when
Because
you're on.
obviously the ones you're actually doing, you definitely need to read
Yeah.
those. I get, yeah, I think she's saying what we would say. I just feel like
She didn't do a very good job
it's
of it.
open to like misinterpretation. But no, I mean, absolutely. You definitely, again, I always say there's no participation points on the LSAT. You do not get credit for a question simply being completed. It has to be correct, right? You only get points for the questions that are correct.
Okay, and
So
you know what?
yeah.
Sorry, I want to
Oh
share this
yeah.
with you. I actually can show it to you. Because I
Okay.
could just grab a different file when I do the video so it doesn't expose her. But like
Okay.
just so you can see the formatting of like the capitalization. It's just
Okay.
it's like does this go did you what's crazy is this it's not even hard to capitalize. It's like
Yeah,
capitalization.
your and score need to be capitalized.
Yeah, and then further, like the second tip is read out loud. Read and out are capitalized, and then loud is lowercase. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Did you even proofread for half a second? But
Yeah.
okay, so far, scoreboard, I'd actually say that's a good tip. I'd say it's communicative,
Yeah.
but I like the idea.
But obviously the idea, yeah, I think this is something, I mean, we talk about this all the time that like we just see this people will be getting like 11 out of like scoring like a raw score of 11 on an LR section out of 25. And then when I ask like, okay, are you doing all the questions? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay, like just fix that. Don't try to do all the questions. And that alone should at least bring your raw score probably 5 points higher. If you just, instead of doing all 25, do 17 and get them all right.
Well, yeah, and then further, if you are getting 11 out of 25 and you never actually start solving questions, you will never improve. So it's like you're not training
Mm,
yourself to attempt questions correctly. You're just training yourself to answer them. And
yeah.
as Madeline has said, I stole this from you, but like there are no participation points. You either got it right or you got it wrong. There's no
Yeah.
half points. Like, oh, you like sort of did it. So,
Yeah.
and anyways, like I always tell people first day of class, like I cannot help you if you're going to just answer questions and not attempt them. Like I cannot solve that. That's the one thing that cannot be improved.
Yeah.
Okay, so far, I'd actually say she's 1-0. She has given a decent tip. The second tip is where I think things kind of go off the rails, which I imagine you're a little ahead of me on that. But tip
Mhm.
2 says read out loud. Most people skip words when they read, perhaps helpful in your daily life, but devastating to your LSAT score. That's not a sentence, is it? But that's not the point. Reading out loud can help you notice if you skip over words. Better yet, read to a friend. Fucked up M dash. They can help you know if you're missing words. That's not how you do an M dash, is it? They can help you know if you're missing words while you read. Anyways, so yeah, what do you think about reading out loud on the LSAT?
Well, first of all, my thing is I don't think it's allowed, is it?
No, it's not. You can't read
Yeah,
out
you
loud.
can't
Like,
unless you have an accommodation for it. Um, but obviously most people don't, and so you can't. Like, so that's just like a non-starter. But also, let's like assuming you were allowed, right? Assuming you were allowed. I still don't think, unless again you have maybe a learning disability or something that really it does truly like it is necessary to you, fine. But I would say for most people, when if that's not, if that's not the case, I don't think it's helpful necessarily. Or the whole goal of this test is to be a strong reader,
Yeah.
point blank, right? And so being a strong reader, I think involves being able to read something to yourself, right? And being able to understand and decipher what they say. Obviously, I think we're sometimes reading aloud, maybe theoretically can help someone. Is it just like because it's a physical action, it like can maybe keep you from like checking out, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, like too bad. That's something you have to like learn and get better at. I mean, you think when you're in law school, you can just be reading all the stuff out loud, in the library. No, like it's just not. I don't think it's a good habit to, and this is again assuming it is allowed. It's obviously not allowed, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's a great habit to foster. Also, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I read out loud, or I don't know if you were in school growing up and you guys would have like read aloud days and the teacher
Like
would like go in a
popcorn or
circle, right? Or
yeah.
popcorn read. I felt like when I would be reading aloud to the class or whatever, I would be so focused on making sure I'm like pronouncing the words correctly and like saying everything clearly. But like I would finish my little segment and I have no idea what they said. You know what I mean? I'm like, I just was like making sure I'm pronouncing everything and saying everything right. And I find that, at least personally, I will retain so much better when I'm just reading it to myself. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Some people might be different, but
And I'll side notice. I mean, you'll see this, but tip two and tip three, there's no spacing,
yeah.
but there's spacing. It's like spend 30 seconds. I don't know. It's just so crazy. Anyways, yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that it's like similar to formal logic where it can force you to really understand the ideas for what they are. But what truly matters is the understanding. And reading out loud is a way to, I guess, like force yourself into like not just cranking through it. But realistically, you're going to have to learn to do that whether or not you're reading out loud. Because like it's going to be embarrassing if you're in the law library reading out loud
Yeah.
in your cases. So at some point, like it is, I don't want to say harsh, but it's like reality. You're going to have to figure out how to read if you're going down this path. And if you have these crutches, that's going to be a problem. And then once again, not to like really just like pile drive this person, but it's not even allowed on the LSAT, which makes me wonder like how tuned into the LSAT world are you if you're giving this advice? Because
Yeah.
you're going to get to test day and they're going to be like, hey, you can't talk. Like, what are you doing? So I'd say that's definitely a bad tip, like one for one. All right, tip three, calm down, which is capitalized. So, little golf clap for her. Modern life can be hectic and frazzled, fucked up M dash. Take some time to unwind before studying or taking a PT or real LSAT, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So yeah, what do you think about calming down? Do most people need to do less LSAT prep and chill more? Or what's your take on that?
I mean, I think I'm sort of neutral on this. I think it's people do have a tendency, I think, to get really worked up and it kind of can create sometimes these like psychological barriers with the test in that they're really kind of stressed about it and for somewhat good reason. I mean, the LSAT's very important, right? So it's obviously something you do want to be dedicating a lot of your energy towards, and it's natural that there'll be some stress involved. I it's tough for me because I feel like I'm naturally just kind of a calm person, and so this often could be like my default mode. So, and I think it's beneficial and great. So I'm like, yeah, everyone should chill a little bit more. But it's probably not the most common
Yeah.
experience that people have. I just think, again, people who tend to take the LSAT tend to just be very like inherently like stressed out people. It just is, I think it just comes with the territory with like law school and whatnot. But obviously we can't be too chill because if it interferes with you actually doing your studying and doing your work, that's not good either.
Yeah, so I'd say it really depends on the person. Because I think for some people, this is a great tip. Like we've definitely ran into the
Yeah.
type A, study too much, never sleep. Like I know people who legitimately don't sleep enough so that they can LSAT prep. And I think that's totally a backfiring plan.
Yeah. Yeah,
On the other
exactly.
hand, I know people that don't study like more than 3 hours a week, at which point they need to not calm down. They need to freak out a little bit more because
Yeah.
the freak out would. So I'd say mostly this is probably like a filler tip. I'd say it also really
Yeah.
depends on the person. Because like I tend to be, as I've shared in the past, I tend to be pretty anxious, high strung. Like that's just who I am. So like I should probably take this tip. Also, some people shouldn't. Some people chill. Like I also have not gonna point back to my friends, but like Actually, that's me, and I won't do that. And occasionally, they don't often listen to the podcast. They just do if they want to like make fun of me and be like, "Look at Ben, he does stupid." Like everyone has a podcast now. Fucking, they need to make podcast equipment more expensive. All those things. But anyways, yeah, I'd say this is kind of like a mulligan. I'd say it's most,
Yeah.
but it's
I think
so
it's, I mean, it's kind of relatively like common sense. I think it's one of those just common pieces of advice, like for any aspect in your life. Like it is helpful to reduce like unnecessary sources of stress. Or like to kind of like practice like quote unquote self-care or like stress management. I think it is just generally helpful just for like your physical and mental health, right?
oh,
And so I think if we interpret it that way, like, yes, but this is also true for like not just the LSAT. I just think anything it's applicable.
yeah. So okay, so I say we're like 1-1-1. Like I'd say that's kind of like a tie slash. It doesn't.
Yeah, I would call this sort of a filler to like three kind of filler. Like
Yeah.
it's true, but like also I feel like this is just kind of a general tip.
Yeah, tip four has me interested with the capitalization because they say treat it like a game. I am wondering why, 'cause I think because it is a pronoun, so I think that would be capitalized if we're following our like title cap. I think like would also be, and then game definitely should be capitalized. So,
Hmm.
anyways, that's not important, but okay, sure. Treat it like a game. Questions can be viewed as challenges you can overcome, not a value judgment on you as a person, an intellectual, etc. Figure out what you need to turn your wrong answers into correct answers and level up your score. So once again, I don't know if that's the best explanation of what you're going for, but yeah, what do you think about treating the LSAT like a game? Is that, do you think, a positive tip for kids?
Again, I really think it depends on the person and like how they respond to like how they motivate themselves and how they sort of respond to incentives. I think when you have people who are like dragging their feet about studying for the LSAT and are treating it like this really cumbersome chore, then kind of doing what you can to make it more entertaining and engaging with the end goal of just getting you to show up and put in the work, it can be a helpful way to think about it. Sort of like, oh, it's like a little quest, like each question. And sometimes I'll phrase it to people like, okay, it's not about all of like the question types or this. It's when you're taking the test, it's you versus each question. Maximize the number you get right. That is the objective for the LSAT. That's it, right? And when I express it that way, I think it can be easier to see that like the exam is not that complicated after all in terms of what we have to do. Um, at the same time, I think it's possible to like over gamify it. This is what happens or how I view certain like online
Yeah, you can go too
platforms. There's
far.
one specifically that comes to mind. I call it number wizard. But it's I feel like the way they have like all of their online course modules or whatever, and it like tracks little progress and all that stuff. It kind of to me is like it seems like Duolingo for LSAT, and that's not helpful because I feel like that's you're just doing it to like check off a box and it's like oh yeah hee hee and again I think it just kind of depends on the person. Thinking about it this way can be helpful, but at the same time you have to make sure that in doing so you're not trivializing the exam.
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I'd say like a healthy dose of competitiveness and like I'm gonna figure these out. And like
yeah.
if you don't find the LSAT even a little bit fun, like I'm not saying this has to be like your idea of recreation, but this shouldn't be like pulling your eyes out. If this is like truly
Mhm.
terrible, I would question if this is the field you should be down. Because
Yeah.
realistically, have you looked at bar exam questions? They make the LSAT look fun. And like have you looked at like law school texts compared to like what you're reading in reading comp? Like not to be that guy, but if you get bored learning about like some French poet, like I promise you, like some Marbury v. Madison is going to be way worse. And I'd say this is someone who like bounced out of law school before I ever got there. So I was like, this isn't for me. There's no shame in that. But like, I think the LSAT is fun. I can't imagine doing law school. So not to say
Hmm.
you have to think the LSAT is fun, but like you shouldn't hate it. Anyways, yeah, I mean, I'd say a little bit of competitiveness is fine, but treating it like a game, I don't know. It's one thing I'd say this is kind of filler. Like you can interpret it in a positive way or a negative way. And realistically, it's kind of crazy that she had needed filler once to get to 7 because realistically, I think each of us could probably write about 1,000 LSAT advice, like actual actionable advice tips. Um,
Hmm.
all right, but let's continue on to try to get through this. So tip 5 says keep constantly improving. Constantly and improving are not capitalized for all of you that are wondering, which I think I'm not an expert on capitalization. Those should definitely be capitalized based on her standards. And she says that is, comma, interesting way to start a sentence, but okay, sure. Get help when you are stuck. You shouldn't stay stuck. Fucked up M dash. There are lots of resources out there, and your time is too valuable to be studying without progress. So, yeah, what do you think? Well, what's your
I mean, this is the one where I think the blurb is actually a little bit more useful than the title.
Yeah.
Because I feel like keep improving, like obviously, right? That's
Yeah,
like the
no
point.
shit.
That's why we're
Like,
here, right? But I get what they're saying here. Like, okay, if it's kind of like I feel like it's basically repackaging that expression of like don't keep doing something the same way and expect different results, right? At the same time, and you and I have talked about this before. I think sometimes what we see a lot with people who are studying for the LSAT, they'll maybe try a certain resource or do something for like a week. And then when they're not magically scoring where they want to be, because spoiler alert, that's not how the LSAT works. Like no one's going 20 points in like a week, right? Um, Often, not always, but often the problem is they just have not let their studying cook long enough, right? It's a function of time. You have to like put in the work and do it. So sometimes it truly is because maybe the way they've been taught something or they've used a resource that is actually counterproductive and backfiring. There's definitely certain resources out there that can overcomplicate this exam for sure. Um, so I do agree that, it is helpful to take advantage of the different resources out there, especially free resources. I mean, there's tons of great free resources too.
yeah.
You shouldn't feel like you shouldn't feel in a position like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. Like if you're feeling frustrated, it's definitely like you should again take advantage of different resources out there. But also
It seems
sometimes
somewhat
it's just that you
helpful.
haven't done the work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, obviously keep constantly improving. I think that's somewhat a bad tip in a weird way because I think people might misinterpret that as like if my score is not going up, I'm doing something wrong. Whereas I always
Hmm.
tell people you want to pay attention to how you're understanding because scores are so volatile. And
Hmm.
if you give them too much power, you can really think you're like I had one person, she took her diagnostic in November. She's been studying with me for about 3 weeks, which is for her, it probably feels like a long time. 3 weeks of studying every day is a good like grind. It doesn't like for us,
Hmm.
like not that much progress. And then she took another test and she only got 1 point better, or maybe she was even 1 point worse than November, but she hasn't studied since November. So like realistically, she's 3 weeks in. But then she
Hmm.
said, "Oh, my sections are going a lot better." I'm like, okay, so like the day you took your prep test didn't go well, but like realistically, that's fine. Like you could have gone
Yeah.
there and just had maybe your diagnostic was a great day and then your prep test was a terrible day. So even if
Yeah.
you got better, your score could go down on a sample of one. Um,
Yeah, it's just too small to know. That's why, and this is also something I sometimes get frustrated with when people are like this is what I'm scoring or whatever, and I find out they've taken like 3 tests. I'm like, you have no idea what you're scoring, or like
yeah,
this is not enough of a sample size to make any sort of even half-baked conclusion from this. And it's so normal, especially too when you are getting into higher scores when it just really is so fickle and so marginal. It's not like you're not gonna like it's not like every single test is gonna be 1 point higher than the last one. It's very, very normal for there to be fluctuation. It's about having the range going up.
yeah,
And that's something I feel like I have to explain to people because they think sometimes when people are new, they expect each test to be like X amount better than the last one. And it's not always going to be like that. Or it's very normal for it not to be like that. It's so long as just overall it's trending in a positive direction.
yeah. So I mean, it's a weird one because I would say, and the other thing I'd say that I'm a little nervous about is she says get help when you're stuck. I'm a little worried that this is somewhat self-serving. Well, I think it's good advice. I think this might be like trying to drum up tutoring business for her, which don't get me wrong, like there I'm not gonna say that she's not providing value because she very well might. I mean, I would be a little concerned about her tutoring, having seen what she's putting out there. But for what it's worth, she could be great. And maybe she just sucks at making like emails. But also, anyways, so overall, where are we at? I'd say one really good tip, and then like three that are kind of interpretable, and then the bad tip
One
screaming out
actively
loud.
bad one.
And then tip six is slow and steady, which seems almost contradictory to tip five. And she says the LSAT is a humbling test. The person trying to add 2 or 3 points at a time will go much farther. Wouldn't that be further? I, Either way, farther and raise their score faster, all caps, than the person trying to add 10 to 20 points ASAP, four ellipses, which I think you use three. Don't be the second person! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! Exclamation point! So, writing style aside, what do you think? Is slow and steady a proper approach?
I actually do. agree with this in the sense of I think when it comes to what I see so often when people who are starting their journey with the LSAT is that they just are really overwhelmed by how like maybe daunting the task seems of like, okay, this is where I'm at and I'm trying to raise my score 20 points. And for many people that can just seem really, really overwhelming. And I think that I feel like sometimes it even causes people to like quit, studying or doing whatever. And by thinking about it as, basically the way I say it is don't compare yourself with the version of you that is scoring that because that person doesn't exist. That like if your goal is 170, you cannot compare yourself to the version of you that's scoring 170 because you are not there yet if you're scoring 150. You have to compare your next practice test against where you are now and just working on improving and just doing better than where you are now. And I do think thinking of it that way makes it more manageable and more encouraging to continue to do it and put in that setting, et cetera, et cetera. Because it is not realistic that, like, let's say in like a week, like, okay, I'm going to improve 10 points, 20 points. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So I agree with like the sentiment behind this.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if I mean, it makes a difference with like how fast you'll improve, but I think more so it's like people who are just trying to do this unrealistic like 20 points in like 2 weeks. Like that's just the number one route to like crashing out and like not actually continuing with the
Well,
test.
I agree with you. I think she's onto something. Once again, I don't know that she's the best messenger in terms of her ideas. Not to like make fun of her too much and just like writing style, but I would say like the way I would put this is like zoom out, focus on question by question as opposed
Yeah.
to because I agree with the idea of like you can't add 10 to 20 points. All you can do is understand. I mean, I would even say trying to add 2 to 3 points at a time. Like, don't even try that. What questions did you get wrong and why did you get them wrong? Figure it
Exactly.
out
It goes
and the
back
points will
to
follow.
yeah, it's you versus the question. Did you get it right or not? That is what we focus on. And just focus on that. Focus on that for months. And then when you step back, you're like, oh, look, this is my score. Cool.
What's also funny, because I'm sure you can relate to this, but we often get questions of like, I'm scoring X, how do I get to X score? And regardless of whether it's 155 to 160 or 160 to 165, it is always the same answer, which is look at the questions you got wrong. What aren't you understanding? And figure them out. It's
Yeah.
not sexy advice, but it's literally the only advice that we can truly give. I mean, occasionally it's like someone scoring 135. It's like you need to learn how to read. But outside of that, it's just like you look at the questions you got wrong. You didn't understand them. Let's figure them out. And then tip 7 doesn't really seem like a tip, more seems like a kind of life advice, but it says dream big. For some reason, missed comma, people are afraid of success. Dream big and maximize your score! Exclamation point. Even if you are just going to the school down the street, get a great score and have the school pay in parentheses at least part of your tuition. So yeah, what are your thoughts on dreaming big, aiming for the stars?
Yeah. I mean, I think you and I see this a lot where people do sort of sell themselves, not even selling themselves short, but just like they just get complacent. They're like, okay, like this score is fine, even though like you and I might know, like, oh wait, no, you can score 5 points higher. Like it's, again, even like a 1 or 2 point difference on your LSAT score can make such a big difference with your um, application outcome and, scholarship outcome. I think the my one gripe with this is not everyone is able to score 175, right? And we don't want to, I don't know how to express this in a way that's like, okay. Or
Yeah,
I don't know. You get what I'm saying? Like, not, this is just natural. There's just different natural levels of intelligence. And I
well,
think we talked about everyone, if you work hard, can, I think, at least score 155, maybe even like higher 150s, right? But not everyone is going to be able to score like let's say 175 and so or 180 or whatever. And so we don't want to misinterpret it as being like, okay, like this is like everyone
right.
should like have that target score.
Yeah.
um
I do like the idea though of like maximize your score because I've been seeing
yeah.
more recently. I actually did an in-person LSAT event for the first time ever down at Texas State, which I'm almost 4 years into LSAT, but having started LSAT during COVID, it was very much so an online experience. I think you've mentioned that you've done like 1 or 2 of those at like when you
Yeah,
were
Boise State. Hmm.
yeah. It was interesting though, because the biggest takeaway I had is that most people taking this test just do not take it seriously at all. And we
Hmm.
run into a biased sample of people that are like searching up LSAT on the internet because that's how people find us.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I was talking to people that a lot of people just register, like take a practice test or two and then take the test, and it blows my mind. So I do like the advice of like really maximize your score. You all need to understand that it is not a binary outcome of either you get in or you don't, and either you get a good
Yeah.
or you don't. It is a you get a high LSAT, schools legitimately pay. Like Matt, I don't want to share too much about your situation, but you're going to like the school down the street and they're paying your like you're not paying anything out of pocket, right? They're just
No.
straight
Yeah.
up. And realistically, if you're 5 points lower, that might not be a thing. So
Yeah.
it's one
No,
of
that's
those
true.
things where, and so what is that worth? I mean, I don't want to like probably like 50 grand at minimum because you probably still get scholarship. You just won't get a full ride. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I mean, Madeline could have like kicked her feet up, having scored a pretty good score, but not truly elite. And it would have cost her $50,000. So it's one of those things.
Yeah. My thing too is you probably see this a lot when people have like, let's say a really strong GPA. They're like, okay, I have a
Mhm.
4.0, which is great, for law school admissions. And they're like, okay, because of that, like I just need this for my LSAT. I just need this. I'm like,
Yeah, I just need a
okay,
150.
but like
Like,
why not? Like you have this amazing GPA. Why not go big and also get a strong LSAT? Like that's their favorite applicant when the GPA and the LSAT is really good. You could really open up so many options. That's I think one of my biggest pet peeves. It's like, why wouldn't you do everything under your control to give yourself the best possible outcome?
yeah,
So
I
like my
actually
GPA was like not as great, right? So I had to do well in the LSAT. Like I didn't really have an option.
sure.
But when people who have like if one of my I think one of my biggest regrets is just not, I just wish I had done a little bit better in undergrad. But like obviously I can't do anything about that now. But that's like when people who happen to have like really strong GPAs, it's like, so I can just get away with getting this. Like you could, but like you could do even better. You could have even more doors
Yeah.
and opportunities
Well, it's
open to
sad. It's
you.
like you could legit go to Harvard and yeah, you're like, I'm just gonna go to Oregon and pay full price because like I don't want to study for 3 months. It's like, okay. I mean that's fine, but the other thing is I think some GPAs are a little bit, I'm sure you've run into this, a little bit inflated. Some
Yeah.
GPA is not indicative of how good of a student they are. Like if someone comes to me with a 4.0, I mean, I'd say generally if someone comes to me with a 2.9, it's pretty easy to know they're gonna be a bad student. Not
Mhm.
universally. Occasionally I have people that are like 10 years out of undergrad and it's pretty uncommon that a 21-year-old with a 2.9 is a kick-ass student. They're usually
Yeah.
a bit of goobers. Not to say if you're a 2.9 21-year-old that your life is over. I would say that it's time for reflection. Why'd you get a 2.9? How are you going to solve that going forwards? The past is the past, but also like let's be real. Like that does say something about you. So it's worth acknowledging like whatever that is. Like we all have things we're not good at. I had a 3.6 in undergrad. Um, I fixed it. Like my last 3 years were 4.0s. Partly like shout out COVID made school really easy, but which is also funny. Occasionally I have someone write an addendum. They're like, COVID made school hard. I'm like, I was in school during COVID and it was not hard. It was like the easiest school I ever did. But it is always amusing when someone, I guess maybe like if you're like in your formative years, it could have been an issue, but I don't know. As someone in college, it was not hard. So, anyways, I guess final verdict on these. Where were we? I'd say, I don't know, only one actively bad tip. The only one that I really disliked was the read out loud. The rest
Was
were,
number two. Yeah. I would say the most useful are probably number one, and then the last two probably 6 and 7.
yeah, I would say that if I
The
come up
rest
with
are kind of just
top,
there.
yeah, and I think the bigger issue is like if I was gonna come up with my top 7 tips, I think they'd be a lot stronger than this. I mean, right off the top of my head, I'd say like focus on actually understanding what they said. Like too many of you just
Yeah.
skim your eyes over the page.
That's
Um,
probably the most important thing. Yeah. And it's like nowhere here.
yeah, otherwise, I mean, slow down actually would be pretty high on my list. I would have that
Yeah.
up there of like, hey, like stop trying to finish them all. You're doing them all shitty. Start doing less, but do them well. And then as you get, I mean, the way I say it is like you want to make it like elementary math. Like if I asked you, Madeline, and you don't have to answer, but like 5 + 2, you'd be like, oh, that's 7. But not because
7.
it's hard, but just because like it's easy. Like you know what it is.
Mhm.
And the more LSAT you do, the easier it gets. We're just like, oh, it's obviously B. And then you start going fast, not because you're trying to crank through it, but just because it's a subconscious process of like, I am good at this. So it's like, yes, you're going to run into hard ones. Like I run into ones that take me a few minutes. I don't know if you know this one. There's a question on the Clovis points, which originated in Siberia and then came to North America. It's a really hard strengthening question, and I probably wrestled with it
Oh,
like 10
yeah, I
minutes.
do know the one you're talking about where it's like it like it's with the
It's like
Bering
over the
Strait.
Bering Strait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But this is, I mean, for those of you listening, you can tell we're definitely a little too in the LSAT weeds.
I
There's
think
like,
it's question 20 on whatever section it is. I think it's like
yeah.
number 20.
But I talked about it for like 10 minutes. And like my explanations never go 10 minutes. They usually are, I'd say 4 to 5 on a hard question. But part of it is I've read it as I think a strengthener when it was a weakener, and that will always kill you if you misread the question. So it's like I'm trying to make the argument better, and I'm like, no wonder none of these answers are looking good.
Mhm.
But anyways, so yeah, overall, I'd say back to the drawing board. If I'm this person, I would edit this. This is online, so you can rectify it going forwards if you're listening. I know we're huge in the
It's interesting because I feel like, obviously we're kind of getting a little bit nitpicky and snarky with the formatting at the same time, but like it is a first impression, right? And I feel like so much of like there's
yeah.
so much like mediocre content in all fields that exist out there that get a pass because like it's just formatted,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, I'm looking
Um,
at your website right now, as you can see, and like there's nothing obviously grammatically incorrect that I can point to, which like obviously I'd say that's not like a super high bar, but like
mhm.
you have way
I mean,
more.
because I have a very basic website, right? But it's just
Yeah,
like it's just that's it. Like it's everything is just
but
I
if
tried to
I
make
had
it
Grammarly
clean.
run through it, it wouldn't like light it up. Grammarly would definitely light that one up. And
Hmm.
anyways, it's just like if you're gonna distribute something, it's not that hard to. Like we have, I mean, it's actually one of the things I use occasionally when we're hiring people is when people mess up like copy stuff, like if they're like missing commas constantly, like one is fine. But if someone's doing it consistently, it's like, uh-oh, we got an issue here. 'Cause it's like I can't trust you to put out stuff like on.
Yeah, that's I think that's what people sometimes don't get. Like it's not about the actual like comprehension. Like we still get what you're trying to say. You know what I mean? But I just think it's about how it exemplifies like the traits of
Yeah, well, not to be
diligence of
fair.
detail, attention to detail, because obviously that's something that's really valued in the legal field. I had a professor once in undergrad. It was a class I took called business law, and I always will. And the professor was like an attorney, and I'll never forget. Like the first day, she was like, when my firm like looks at resumes, like if there is a typo, straight to the trash. We don't care how like it doesn't matter. They could have solved, cured cancer, done whatever, but if there's you know those grammatical issues or there's typos or just clearly hasn't been proofread, trash.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think people because it's really like not like the missing capitalization is not the biggest thing. And
Mhm.
like, we all make typos. I make typos on Instagram all the time. I actively choose not to fix things. I just don't care. But when I'm like writing a book or like when I'm like putting out stuff on our website, like that I actually make clean. Because like I think it's also the format. And this is her first touch point with people. And I think it's just like a lack of detail that it's like it's your first impression. Like, do you really want your first impression to be I don't know. Maybe it is nitpicky, but even the spacing, like the spacing here, between tip three and tip four versus the spacing between five and six, like even with spacing, I think this one's like triple spaced and that one's like one. It's just
Mhm.
like I guess she was probably trying to fit them all onto 2 pages, but I don't know. I feel like having dead space but having consistent spacing would have been better, which is nitpicky. But anyways, how are we doing on time? Yeah, I guess should we rapid fire this podcast? Personal statement. Are you feeling good to read a personal statement real quick and go through
Sure.
it? All right, so I will drop it in. This is anonymous from the person who submitted it. I will, I guess, read it sentence by sentence, and then we'll talk through it. So, real quick, first off, you didn't do paragraphs, which is incredibly frustrating. As someone looking at this, I want to like guide.
Yeah, that was my first initial impression
I think there's meant to be one here, which
there.
is pretty
Yeah.
deep down, but you can see that it's just not indented. Which I get this is like a first draft, but also like it also looks like it's 2 paragraphs. So is this? Hold on, let me read your email. You write, "What's up, Ben? I really appreciate your podcast and the information you put out. I am reluctantly dropping my personal statement for law admissions below. Haha. Would love to be featured on the pod. I really try to take your advice by giving real life examples and actions showing who I am instead of trying to explain who I am. I want to get this personal statement right, so any criticism you have, let it rip." So, okay, cool. Nice email. He seems like he knows what he's getting himself into. And he's actually probably going to get a little bit more moderated of advice because, or not advice, but feedback because you're here to keep me nice. So let's see what we have. So pointing the camera at us, the photographer told us to say, quote, "Wolf chili," as he snapped a picture of the 2023 Virginia, well, actually redacted university. Well, I guess wolf chili is probably identifiable now that I've said that. Um, you're one person on the baseball team, so no one's gonna figure it out. So Virginia Commonwealth University baseball team roster. Okay, so far we have a photographer taking a picture of the baseball team. I guess on a scale of like 1 to 10, or I guess is this? Do you think this is a good opening, or do you think this is a?
It's I've seen like worse. It's okay. I don't know.
That's where I'm at too. It's like there's definitely worse. Like it's not like I argued
There's
this my
definitely worse. Oh, there's definitely worse. Yeah.
or
It's
like I
one
wanted to
thing.
be a lawyer since I was 7. Like those
Yeah,
are
that's the worst one. My thing is like, so obviously it's a common piece of advice that like you want your, first sentence to be, or like you often hear like, oh, you want to have like a hook to like draw the reader in. But sometimes I feel like that advice just gets like misapplied very often.
yeah.
In that like you just have these like random sentences sometimes that like you can almost like tell that like, oh, this person was told to like make a hook, so to speak. And and it just like isn't working. And I feel like that's kind of what this is giving to me, that it's like meant to sort of, we're just sort of dropped in this scene, which that idea I think is okay, right? Like it can work. I'm I'm curious to read more, but part of it's just because like we're here and I have like
Yeah.
we're doing it. I wonder if it were in a different context, if I'd just be like, okay, cool, you know?
And I will say
Um,
I just did a bit of research. This is a Division 1 baseball team. So this is not like some because I've never heard of Virginia Commonwealth team. I'm a West Coast person. West
oh,
Coast.
VCU? You don't know VCU?
I've never heard of it. But anyways, so that's a Division 1 school. Not everyone's gonna know that. I would like name drop that without name because let's be real, playing Division 1 sports is different from playing like club like frisbee at
Yeah, that's
university.
true. Hmm.
So, and that does say positive things about you. It says you have like real commitment to doing something. You're disciplined, and
Yeah.
in that sense, I kind of like it. But also, when I hear Virginia Commonwealth University as a West Coast person, I'm like, did you play D3 baseball? Because like I could have played D3 baseball as someone who did
Mhm.
not play baseball, at least not past like little league. So
Yeah, because
um,
obviously, like if he's applying, like it wouldn't matter if he's applying to a school like in Virginia, but at the same time, you never want to make assumptions about who's reading it or whatever. You want it to be as reachable and clear to as many people as possible.
yeah, and I guess that is a fair point because like I guess if you and I guess you could infer this because you get to UNC and not to read ahead. But overall, I'd say it's definitely not the worst opening. It's not the best though, because like I am seeing you as a college kid. While a more serious college kid, because Division 1 athletes do tend to be more serious, you are still a college kid, which like you are competing with actual adults. So yeah, I'd say it's above average of an opening because while it's not what I would lead with ultimately, compared to most people's personal statements, this is a fact in a positive direction, which
Yeah, and I think there's ways to, like we mentioned, like to clarify it a little bit to make it stronger. Like I think it did. I don't know. We'll see what direction it goes in. Um, but I think there's a way to make this work.
yeah, no, I agree. So let's see where we go with this. To this day, I still don't know what quote wolf chili means, but I do know that this was the last team photo I would ever take in my career.
Okay. Um, I feel like why didn't he find out what it means?
Yeah, I mean it's sad.
I
I
kind of get it though, because like so at my undergraduate school, we had like a stupid phrase too, or it was like Hoya Saxa. I'm
sure.
like, which I actually do know what it means. It's Greek for like what rocks, which also like I feel like doesn't really make sense and it's like kind of unclear. But I kind of get like the weird, silly phrase that just like kind
Oh,
of
we
takes
all
on its
have them. We
own
had
meaning, right?
wait, what did you say yours was? It was some Latin one?
Hoya Saxa.
Okay, I see. Yeah, ours was at the University of Colorado. It was SCO Buffs. SCO is SKO. It's meant to be let's go. It's like a
Oh,
thing. It's super crazy. But like I guess every school has something like this. Um, I don't know. Not what I really care. I don't care what your like school's motto is when we're learning. I also don't love that we're like going towards like this is the depth of your sports career. Many
yeah, this is
people
the last team photo I would ever take in my.
did. I guess I've never asked you this because we're adults and we don't really talk about high school stuff. Did you play any sports or have any? Was that you or?
No, I did competitive dance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but you could talk about like the last time you ever did like a dance meet, but I wouldn't know because like that's probably not the best thing to talk. I mean, I don't know. It's you're a Division 1 baseball player. I'm not trying to equivocate what Madeline and I have done athletically, but also I don't really care about like the depth of your career. It's we all go through it as people that are like athletes, and also it is not that important in the grand. It sounds like you're a high school kid when you talk about stuff like that. It's the last time I ever put the uniform on, which like I get it. It's emotional and whatnot, but also you're applying for law school here, and like even Division 1 baseball is still Division 1 baseball. So, but once again,
Yeah, and I think part of it too is like because this was in 2023, so relatively recently, right? So for this person, it obviously probably still stands out as something that's really significant in their life, right?
sure, yeah,
And I think you and I as being a little bit more removed from that not to negate this person's experience, like it's definitely very valuable and definitely very meaningful in their life, but yeah, it can kind of come across as like not like oh woohoo, just because I think we have a little bit more perspective. But obviously, think about someone who's on an admissions committee, right? Who's like full like ancient elder, right? I mean, not that they're all like old, but I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect here, unless whoever happens to read it also happen to play college baseball,
Yeah, well, and it's not like this isn't gonna hurt you. It's just, and I actually don't hate it. Like, I don't know that you want, because if you are a Division I baseball player and you're a college kid, realistically, it probably is like the biggest part of your life by a wide
Yeah,
stretch.
absolutely.
I don't know that I'd be talking about like the end of your career. I'd probably more focus on the winning or like what the
Yeah,
commitment
I
was.
was gonna say, I
But
feel like there's a lot of ways to talk about like the skills and responsibility and things you
yeah,
achieved and all of that stuff, like basically showcasing yourself.
and
Um,
I would also probably like, I guess we should read more because we're like 2 lines in. We probably
yeah,
should.
we probably need some
But
context.
I don't like where we go next, because then we say
Yeah,
recently I met with an old VCU professor to ask if he would be willing to write me a letter of recommendation.
okay,
That,
this is just like a total jump scare, I feel like.
it's like true of everyone applying to law. Everyone's recently talked to a professor like, hey, will you write me a letter of rec? That's part of the process. Also,
Yeah.
so like I don't know. They continue
It
and
also just doesn't transition. Like they took this
yes,
photo and now he's reading with the professor. This has nothing to do with the baseball team.
yeah.
The VCU professor was not your baseball coach, presumably. Like, this is probably meant to segue us into something else, but I just feel like they're either just tell us the next thing or transition it better from the baseball or keep talking about the
Yeah.
baseball or something.
And he does continue. We recollected the time during my career at VCU. So like we won't spend too much time talking, but it's like I just don't care. One in particular was when I pitched against the University of North Carolina in a stadium full of over 10,000 people shouting and heckling at me. I hate that we're recollect. Like, if we are going to tell this story, I prefer we just lead with this. Like, you're just on the mound. People are
Yeah.
looking at you. We could skip this whole prelude of like they took a picture of us and I talked to my professor. I still don't know if this is the story I would go with, but it would be interesting. Like you're at the University of North Carolina. I, as a West Coast person, know of that school. So it's like a good one to lead with.
But I
And
think it's a lot easier too for like the reader to kind of visualize and be like, I feel like most people have been to like a sporting event of some sort, right? And kind of can understand and like see like what that's like versus just like snapping a photo. It's like, okay.
there
Um,
are like small facts here that I think actually like was one, you're pitching. You're not some bench warmer. You actually are in the game.
yeah.
I'm not going to mention your ERA, which I did look up, but how'd you do at North Carolina? Point two.
Oh my gosh, Ben.
You walked two, struck out one, and your ERA was 16.2. Okay, that's not great for us non-baseball fans. Like, so okay. So it didn't go well. Not to spoil it, but I've just looked it up.
Oh my gosh.
This is not a good outing at UNC. So, and I'm kidding. Like, you're a Division I baseball player. I get that you're probably, it's really hard. Like, I get it. Also, I just had to look. So, okay, sure. Also, I do like over 10,000 people. So, like, you're not saying like, it's very just factual, which I like. So,
Yeah.
I actually care. You're not playing Little League on the backfields. Like, you are an actual baseball player that people pay to go watch.
Yeah. It's not like an intramural or whatever. Is that what it's called when it's like just for fun? I don't
Sure, yeah.
know.
Recreational, NARPs, all
Yeah.
that stuff. I vividly remember the moment. I hate that. I would prefer to just say what happened, but I vividly remember the moment they called my name from the bullpen where pitchers warm up before they go into the game. I would cut that. People know what the bullpen is. Well, actually,
Yeah.
pause. Do you know what the bullpen is,
Well,
Madeline?
I couldn't I couldn't give you like a like this textbook definition, but I know it's like an area that they are in the stadia, like it's just like
I think it's
where
even used like colloquially. Like,
I think so. It's just like it's like a holding pen, basically.
yeah,
Like this is where they are. So like
like
I
people
can't
even.
like
It's like if I would call the bullpen in, like it's like calling like backup in a weird way. Like I think people know that.
yeah. So I wouldn't define it. I mean, I'm very for what it's worth, I'm like so just like out of the loop of sports unless it's soccer. I don't know anything about anything else. And I wouldn't need the definition. So I feel like that's a pretty good litmus test of like you can probably axe it.
But yeah, right. Like I actually do like that we're seeing it. I would write it differently, but I like the idea that we're telling a story of you pitching in an actual legitimate Division I baseball game.
Yeah.
They continue. And I then jogged out to the mound. I feel like that's kind of inferable, but sure. As I stepped on the mound and picked up the baseball, the Tar Heel fans did this, colon. Which actually that is a correct usage of colon. I don't like that you're using it, but colons need to a colon is an equal sign. The what comes before it needs to So this needs to equal what comes after the colon, which you do technically do correctly. I'm
Yeah.
genuinely impressed that you do that because most people fuck that up. But also, just because you did it correctly doesn't mean you should do it. Like you shouldn't write that way just because you know how
I
to.
feel like they could just say what the Tar Heel fans, like,
Yeah,
just
the Tar
give
Heel
us the
fans.
descriptor of what they did.
All right, so
Yeah.
we'll do what you wrote and then we'll do our edit. So the Tar Heel fans did this: colon, one side of the stadium would scream tar and the others heel very loudly. And you could just send the fans would, I guess it does kind of work because I'm trying to think about how to phrase it. I'm having a harder time. So maybe it's more excusable than I had initially thought.
I
Do you
would
see
say,
how
like,
this
as I stepped onto the mound, the Tar Heel fans, well, you could say the Tar Heel fans started screaming tar and the other heel. I don't know if they started, but like, yeah, you could flip
Yeah.
it for dramatic effect. Because if
Maybe
they
like
started doing it, that's like stressful, I think.
either way, they're doing a chant, you're pitching, and apparently you shit yourself because you put up a 16.2 ERA. I kid, of course, but also like for
Okay,
reference.
for what it's worth, this person,
Yeah.
I doubt the admissions committee is gonna be looking all this stuff up. So,
Yeah,
um,
but like for like what's a bad ERA? So like obviously this is I don't know what Division One baseball is. I know in like actual baseball, like above 5 is bad, and we're at 16.2, which it happens. We all have bad days, but it's pretty rough. They continue. I took a deep breath, removed my cap from my head to look at my mother's cutout photo, and proceeded to battle. I don't know if I'd say that's not the verb I would use after looking at the stats against one of the best teams in the NCAA. Um, I don't know, like. Do you think we learned much there? I feel like that's kind of like artsy in sake of artsiness as opposed to like
now, yeah, I feel like now it's kind of getting a little bit fluffed out.
yeah.
Um,
It's a lot of this. I feel like this is narrative for narrative's sake without really like the content here is like you played a real legit Division One baseball game, which is good. Like I like that fact.
yeah,
So it's really dragging on at this point. It's like, okay, we get it. You play baseball. Like let's learn. Like that's a nice touch, but I want you to launch off of that and then talk about more professional stuff. I don't know what
yeah.
you've done professionally, but there's got to be better than this.
Yeah, because now that we're halfway through the first page, I'm still like, okay, but how does this tie into law school or the law in any capacity other than the fact that you're recollecting this with your professor? At the same time, just recollect it with us, the reader. You know what I mean? That goes back to kind of the structural issues we had at the beginning.
That being said, while I have a lot to improve on this, ironically, I'd say this is better than most people's personal statements because and that's not an endorsement of this one. This is more just a condemnation of everyone else's in terms of how bad they are upon being submitted. But and also I really hope this is a rough draft with a lack of indentation. Like I really hope you just crap this out. Because if you crap this out, this is like totally fine starting point.
Yeah, I would agree.
If this is like final draft, like looking for a thumbs up approval, I'd be more concerned. But if this was just like I'm just throwing things out there, I actually feel pretty good about where this will be come full edits. But
Well, and the fact that obviously he sent it to you and was like, please give me the feedback, I think suggests that
yeah,
he's receptive and recognizes like there's going to be changes made or like.
but let's see what else they have. The funny part, I hate that, is that this is not what my professor and I specifically remembered. Ooh, I hate that sentence.
I don't, yeah.
Like, what?
Then why did you tell us?
The professor, yeah. Why are we even talking about it then?
And I also feel like it's not funny. I mean, I know that's just an expression, but I don't like the expression because it's never funny.
Like, well, because now we're asking, is it funny? We're like, it's not though. Like it's not that funny. Like they continue. It was the fact. So are you saying it as in like what I remembered? Because I would just say like what I remembered. But either way, I would rephrase this pretty substantially. It was the fact that I pitched that night and the next day, right after we lost, get knocked out of the playoffs, took a bus straight to Tallahassee to participate in the annual selective, I hate that adjective, Donald J. Widener Summer for Undergraduates FSU Law Program. So that's a pretty brutal sentence. I don't.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not understanding when he pitched.
Sorry, and I know I took it away from you. I'm just 45 words, which is I tend to hard cap people at 25, but yeah, I mean, so I guess we're showing that like you're really busy. You went straight from like a crushing baseball loss to like doing pre-law stuff. I will tell you as a pre-law.
Oh, I see that the next. Sorry, I didn't mean to, but I was like confused. Like, was he pitching the next day? No, he pitched that night, and then they went. Okay, yeah, it's just very.
But also, like Madeline and I are law school admissions professionals. Have you ever heard of the Donald J. Widener Summer for Undergraduates FSU Law Program?
I've not.
No, and this is not like a gotcha. I've never heard.
No,
of
no,
it.
no, no, no.
I don't know. Like, is it that selective? As like, I would be careful. It's one of those things where if you just said it participate in the annual program, I would really cut that adjective selective.
Yeah, because that's. I mean, it's helpful to give us that context. Okay, you're doing. regardless of what is it, just because I haven't heard of it, I mean, it definitely it seems to be something that is
Looking, oh, it's free.
pretty
Okay,
good
that's
use
good.
of your time.
I would mention it's free because when you like, I always get worried like, are these cash grabs? Because like, for example, there's Lex Fellowship, which is just a total cash grab, and it does not
Mm.
actually help people with law school admissions. This one actually is free, which means that they actually do like select you in a weird way. I would just say in the like no cost, or I mean, honestly, I wouldn't mention it either way because these programs are not nearly as impressive to law schools as you undergrads think they are. You guys think that going to some pre-law program makes a difference in your admissions? I will tell you, it is like it's a mulligan. It does not matter one way or the other. I think it's nice for you to see if you actually want to do this, but like this is like the admissions officer is not reading this and going, "Oh shit, so and so went to the summer for undergraduates FSU law program. We need them out of like no one thinks that." So I'd probably cut it. But
Yeah, for what it's worth, I mean, when I was an undergrad, I mean, now obviously I applied to law school several years out of undergrad, but like people are like, oh, what were like your people ask me like, what were your extracurriculars in undergrad? I'm like, first of all, they don't matter. Second off,
yeah,
I like worked retail. Like that's what I did. You know what I mean? It doesn't, and clearly didn't matter in either way.
not to
So
be obnoxious here, but Madeline, with do you mind sharing your GPA, or is that something you prefer to keep
no,
tighter?
it's yeah, it was 3.4.
And you got into the fourth ranked law school in the country with a 3.4. So like you do not need some crazy soft factors to over and like since college, what have you been up to? Just to like quickly fill people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been a stay-at-home mom. I have two kids, and I tutor part-time for the LSAT for the
Yeah.
past 3 years.
So she's part of an elite club of us LSAT professionals, which, is very impressive. But realistically, people don't tend to view this as like the most impressive, but you still got in with a 3.4.
Oh yeah, no, like that's it. Like I'm like a mom. That's like the least valued profession out
Yeah, so
there.
the idea that you have to like be some crazy impressive. Anyways, I also find it amusing, especially when I get reached out to by like freshmen in college. They're like, "What can I do for like law school?" I'm like, "Get a high GPA." Like, I promise you, your clubs don't matter. I always tell people you should do them because you should want to be involved for like your
You
own
be
sake.
involved.
But for
Yeah.
admission's sake, it is pointless. Like if you're just doing it for admissions, like don't waste your time. Like I had a girl, she emailed me, she's like, "Should I volunteer this summer? I want to help my admissions." I'm like, "Do you want to volunteer?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Don't waste your well, I mean, you probably should. Like I would like do some soul searching, like be a better person." But also I'm like, don't do it for law school. Like they don't care. They're not even gonna look. Like it's not
No,
that deep.
I think it really like I like to kind of emphasize this to people because I think it really just emphasizes the role that my LSAT score played in my admissions outcomes. Because if
Yeah.
my score were 5 points lower, it doesn't matter. I could be extracurricular professional star and I'm not getting in. Versus like I was like, I mean, to be fair, the things that are important to me that I do, like with my kids, I'm very passionate about it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I give it 100%. And it is maybe more unique, right? But it's again not viewed as like impressive at all. And so yeah, I think it really just can emphasize how much those stats do matter.
Yeah, let's see what else we have.
Anyway, back to the show.
I always say Mr. Good, who I think is your professor. We never introduced him as Mr. Good, but now you're saying it's Mr. Good. Um,
Yeah, so we want some clear or
yeah.
continuity there.
Let's So Mr. Good asked me, we'll redact the name. So and so, what drives you to do these things? Question mark. What differentiates you from the athletes I teach who neglect academics and post athletic career goals? Um, I'm a little skeptical. That's what he said. Like, I don't know. I just like, really, is that exactly what he asked you?
I wouldn't put it in quotes. If you're gonna just share what he said, just say like he mentioned, or just say it in that more just like narrative form, so that way we don't have to get it word for word. Because don't, I don't suspect this is what he said word for word.
Yeah,
Uh,
not
it just
there's no
doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound like what differentiates you from the. It sounds like a character in like like The Giving Tree or something. like oh, why would you or something like that if that makes sense.
But yeah, so I'd probably change. I mean, I don't hate the sentiment of it. Well, I kind of do because like I prefer you just say like why you're going to law school as opposed to like using your professor as a foil to like ask you. It's like you can just say why you want to go. You don't have to like
Yeah.
have someone, I guess, like tweeze it out of you. But anyways, we continue. I paused before answering this question because I genuinely didn't know. Um, would you put that in an application to law school that you genuinely don't know why you want to go to law school? Is that a point in your favor for being a?
No.
It's like this
Well, I
is
mean, I know it's obviously in the context of what enables him to balance his academics and like career. I know it's not necessarily explicitly about the law, but at the same time, just in any context, I feel like it's not particularly flattering to be like, I don't know, or like to kind of just demonstrate some lack of
Yeah.
thought, even though it's perfectly normal. Like it's definitely not like I feel like most people have a certain experience where they're like maybe don't, or maybe they understand like deep down why something is the way, but they've never really fleshed out that thought, and are prompted to for the first time. Like I think that's fairly normal. At the same time, I think just the way that it comes across, it's anything that could potentially be used or held against you. I think it's just better to leave out.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it's not, we're not making fun of you. And I wouldn't say making fun of you, but we're not critiquing the idea because I think it's fine to not be fully sure at this stage in your life.
Yeah,
Also,
that's
you
very
don't-
normal.
just
Yeah.
don't say that. Like, you don't have to tell them. Like, I have all sorts of things that you could hold against me in an application to law school. I skipped class a ton when I was a freshman. I didn't go. I didn't step. I didn't take it serious. Like, these are things are true, but like also don't tell them. Like, that's dumb.
Yeah.
So anyways, we continue. I knew that I wanted to be successful at something other than baseball, and that I did not want to be a baseball coach like most players do after retiring. Once again, I'm also like, that's a claim. As an LSAT person, I'm like, really? Do most Division One baseball players become baseball coaches? Over
Yeah.
50%? I'm doubtful, but I guess we can kind of keep reading because we're going long on this one. But then it came to me that is cringe. I don't know how else to say that. I'm just like, don't say that. Just all this prelude cut. Just say why you're going to law school. When I take off my cap to look at the picture of my mother, it's for motivation. When I look at that picture, I see the woman who worked double shifts at Walmart trying to raise my brother and me independently. I see the woman who walked down the redacted university stage holding me in one arm and my brother in the other. I think it's a nice thought, but I guess I'll finish this thought. I'd be damned if I didn't, I told my professor. And it's true. How could I not? Um, yeah, I guess the sentiment is nice,
Yeah.
but it's also like inspiration. It's not really anything you did. It's kind of where I'd say this is like diversity statement. Like you come from, it seems like lower income. Your mom was a single mom. It sounds, I mean, I hope she was a single mom. If not, it's kind of well, okay, yeah, you say independently. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Would your inclination be similar? Would you move this to a diversity statement and try to go in a different direction?
Yeah, because I actually, I mean, I appreciate what you're expressing here, and I think it is insightful, but it just seems a little bit disjointed with what you've been saying previously. So I think it could be appropriate to put in like a different essay and craft an essay around this or around kind of seeing or taking inspiration from what your mom did and what she was able to accomplish, how that really has shaped who you are as a person, et cetera. Like, all of that. Because almost it seems like we're shifting into like a different essay now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like I think it's a nice thought. Also, it's not really that much about you. Like we're not even your
Yeah.
mom at school. And I get your inspiration, but realistically, everyone has inspiration for why they want to go to law school. It's different. And maybe some people would be more inclined to like be sympathetic to this as opposed to like people that just want to make money. But also, I don't know, it's still not terribly about you. It's about your mom and your background. And it's fine to have motivation, but throughout this essay, because we're almost at the conclusion, I've learned that you played Division One baseball and your mom inspired you, and you went to a Florida State undergrad program for law school, which like this is fine. None of these are like holy shit, we need this person in our law school. It's like if your numbers are there, schools will probably be happy to take you. If they're not, they're gonna
Mhm.
not think twice about throwing you right in the
Yeah,
trash.
this is not gonna make the
Yeah,
difference.
but we kind of end with I'd say a little bit of rhapsodizing. So let's read that real quick. For someone like my mother, who struggled to give me everything, why would I not try to become everything I could possibly be? Question mark. The same discipline, resilience, and drive that fueled my baseball career now pushes me toward law. That's a little conclusive, I would say, but okay, sure. The legal field demands the same intensity, preparation, and competitive mindset that I thrived on as an athlete. Beyond that, it challenges me intellectually, offering a field where I can constantly learn and grow. Just like I did on the mound, I'll keep looking down at the picture of my mother with an undying passion to achieve what's in front of me. So, and that's the end of the statement for those of you listening because you can't see it. But yeah, I guess in conclusion, I guess how would you react to this statement? Having read this,
Well, as a whole, okay, not just the last part, but like as a whole. Well, I feel
yeah,
like okay, I feel like to me, like we talked earlier, about how like there's sometimes it's like okay, this essay has to be completely scrapped, or like okay, there's a block of stone that we can like chisel from. I feel like this is definitely a chiselable one, if that makes sense. I think there's elements here that will work. I think to me the biggest issue is just some of the way it's expressed narratively, like with the whole like
yeah,
I was meeting with my professor, all of that stuff. I think it has to go a lot more direct to like the substance of the essay, and likewise, it needs more substance. because I feel like the sort of why law at the end to me is a little bit
It feels very like
half-baked.
forced and yeah, and also
Yeah.
it's like your mom inspired you. Like why does that lead to law school though? Couldn't you do a million things with your
I
mom
feel
just
like you could just sub out law with like medicine or XYZ in the same like it's
business,
the same
like
thing. Yeah.
my TikTok
Um,
career? Like there's all sorts of things you could throw in there. Like which it's so yeah, I'd say I guess my recommendation would be probably expand on the baseball stuff. I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. I'm like a little nervous.
I think I would like to see more about like because you talk about the do you mind scrolling?
Yeah.
How when at the end where it's like the same discipline, resilience, and drive, can like show us those skills. Show us you demonstrating that in how you balance baseball and academics because we're just told like that you did do both, but I would love to see kind of examples of
Okay. And I found
that.
this in LinkedIn if you want to look just to get any inspiration. Because like we're looking at your LinkedIn, so and so, and overall, I'd say so like you had baseball. You were a law intern at a law firm for it looks okay, so only 3 months, but still, like you did actual work at a law firm, so you could talk about that. I think tying that in with your baseball might be interesting. Um, Otherwise, there's not a ton, but I think like talking about playing Division One baseball and the fact that you've done actual legal work is a pretty convincing argument.
Yeah, I would like maybe if you're able to sort of tie that in a little bit to clarify why the law specifically, I think.
Yeah.
Um, that would be helpful.
Well, also, I have a lot less doubt about someone who's actually worked in a law firm because I know a lot of people that work in a law firm. They're like, "This fucking sucks. I don't want to do this," and
Hmm.
it's out. But you've actually worked there, so you can at least say to some level of credibility of like, "I want to be here," and I would make sure they know that because like having read this, I have no idea that you've done any legal work, and that's a nice fact in your favor. I think people often think it's boring to talk about like basic legal work, but what it shows is that you've actually thought this decision through. Because, like, let's be well, and Madeline and I can speak on this. Most people applying to law school have not thought this decision through. We talked to a lot of them.
Hmm.
They have no idea what lawyers do. They have no idea what lawyers make. They don't understand the game they're getting into. And not say that you fully do, because we all have, I'd say, gaps of knowledge, but you have a more like full idea of what it is, having sat and seen what attorneys do. So I would mention that. Otherwise, I'd move the mom motivation to a diversity statement. I think if it's done well, it makes a really powerful diversity statement. But you
I
do
think
have
so
to.
too. Yeah, because I think it should be it can add a lot to your application to talk about that, but I think it would make more sense in a separate essay. Because to
And
me it just
yeah,
seemed
it
like
felt
a bit of a jarring shift.
yeah, I thought it was kind of forced, like not
Yeah.
to be harsh on it, but it felt like it came out of left field. Um, just like the balls flying out of left field when you put up a 16.2 ERA against North Carolina. I mean, well, I guess that's not so you pitched point two innings. So how many
I
runs?
don't I
It,
that's all over my You could have told me any number. I'm like,
it's
good job.
it's no, it's not a good job. This is not a good outing.
I don't know
But
much about baseball.
also it's you know like goal allowed a stat in soccer?
Is
Like
what?
like goals against a stat in soccer for goalies? Like, do they track that?
Oh, like goals conceded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I think it has to be like 6 to 7 goals conceded, like for context. So like
Okay, that's all. Yeah, okay.
yeah, it's like it was really bad. It did not go well. But also like you're still a division one baseball player. I would probably give up 50 earned runs if I pitched because I'd be just trying to throw strikes. So it's still impressive. Like I'm not trying to take away from you, but also
And again, it's the reality. Someone reading this is not going to be looking up the facts of the game. Probably, maybe,
yeah,
but
they might, but realistic, unless they're a baseball aficionado, which let's be real, most of these people are nerds, so they're not exactly baseball like folks. Although I guess baseball folks do kind of overlap with nerds in a weird way. Anyways,
like
I
there's a
think
lot of stats and like
it's I'd say this
niche
is a
facts.
fixer upper. We don't have to tear it down. Most of
Yeah,
these are tear downs where it's like bringing the bulldozer, just needs some
yeah.
hearing. But I would definitely be redoing the kitchen and the bathroom and the ceiling and the roof. And basically we're keeping the foundation and everything else is getting switched out. But it's not bad. Like I think this has a lot of potential. So
Yeah.
cool. Well I think we'll actually wrap there real quick. I'm gonna throw another. Actually, will I? No, I won't. So out to the outro, and I'll see you folks. If you enjoyed what we talked about today or learned something new, please leave a review or a rating. It really does help us out and helps us reach more people. If you have a question or anything you want talked about in the world of LSAT or law school admissions, you can always email support@heyfuturelawyer.com to get it in the podcast agenda. Just put podcast in the subject and we will talk about it on the show. Alrighty, that's all we have for today. So I will see you all next time.